All right, everybody, welcome to our second episode of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm your host, Jacob, here from Made the Cut, along with my co-host Peyton from Big League Analysis over on TikTok.
What's
How's it
up? How you doing?
doing? Great. We're going to get started with our first segment here, which, as always, is going to be, does this take make the cut? Do you want to throw out the first take, my man?
Yes, because we have relevant baseball news now, especially with the Boris Snell holdout
Oh,
finally
yeah,
ending
finally ending.
just for 2 years and 66 million with an opt out.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
but
yeah. Only a small boatload of cash instead of the yacht load and some other guys
oh,
got.
of course, relative. Only 66 million sounds crazy, but whatever.
For
Overall
sure.
point is now with a fortified rotation. Does this take make the cut? Now with the fortified rotation and some other splashes in the offseason, do the Giants slip into a wild card spot? Does that take make the cut?
I think the Giants do slip into a wild card spot. What's funny
Okay.
is I love the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks have a lot of natural talent. I think that somebody
hmm
like Corbin Carroll has a chance to be an MVP candidate in the near future. However,
hmm
do I now expect the Diamondbacks, who had a relatively quiet offseason, they definitely plugged some holes, don't get me wrong. I'm no Diamondbacks hater. Do I see them, who won 84 games last year, taking a step forward? Because the Giants, in my opinion, if I had an over under in front of me of 86 wins, or let's say something of that nature, I'd probably select the over now. So do I think the Diamondbacks are going to be better than the Giants? Probably not. The Giants have done a really good job in years past of putting together an organization that can win with less than superstar pieces. And now, finally, after a couple off seasons of all the news with Arson Judge and Carlos Correa, they finally have landed a couple superstars. Do I think that an organization that's used to winning with guys who aren't necessarily like the best baseball players can now win with extremely good players who have like stature and some expectations on them in Chapman and Snell and a couple other guys? I think so. I think that they're going to win. I think they're going to do decently. Do I see them winning 100 games plus like they did in 2021? No. But I could easily see them going, 86 to 90 wins. And the Diamondbacks, as much as I love them and I'm looking forward to another year of maturation, I don't know if 90, 86 to 90 wins is necessarily in their wheelhouse this season.
You see, I do agree with you. To me, having three wild card spots now makes it pretty easy to justify any sort of team making the playoffs
Yeah,
that has a chance to be above 500.
right.
Because if you're making the playoffs with 83, 84 wins, like you can there's a lot of teams who could win 84 games,
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
But when we're talking about the Giants, I think the interesting thing, I made a piece about this today on my TikTok, is about how the funny thing about this is the pitcher who dominated them last 2 years, was Blake Snell. In 2023, Blake Snell didn't allow a single run to the Giants in three starts.
Wow, that's crazy.
The
Wow.
hitter that dominated the Giants the most, outside of Juan Soto, who just edged him out in OPS, was Jorge Soler.
Oh, wow. That's
So it's
crazy.
like, but
Wow,
like the
they,
way,
they really went out there and like
so
plugged their holes with guys that were killing them
they
now.
got, yeah, they're like, you know what? Like, all right, we're 2 games under 500. What if the two guys who dominated us the most, if they're on our team now, those get flipped into wins. Now we're 80. No, but for real though, like they have now, if their starting pitching staff is healthy, they have a potential rotation of Logan Webb first, Blake Snell, Kyle Harrison, 2021 Cy Young, Robbie Ray, and then some sort of combination of Alex Cobb, Keaton Wynn, who had some flashes at the end of last year. That's a rotation.
That sure
That's
is. Something I wanted to throw up about Robbie Ray that I actually saw the other day is,
Mhm.
he has the second highest K per nine in baseball history behind Chris
What
Sale. He is the
what
second highest K per nine in MLB history. So, I mean, that's
yes.
not to say his like production has been insane. He's had like a relatively above average numbers a lot of years. However, that speaks volumes that he's your guy who's coming in at number four. For a lot of teams, even for like the Mariners or something like that he would have been penciled into, he would have been, their three,
Mhm.
two, potentially guy veteran presence. Him being at four, and then I think Kyle Harrison is a good chance to also be a very productive pitcher at the big league level. It's hard for me to imagine them being a lot worse or even like relatively worse than they were last year. And if last year, they're close to 500 with a couple ads, why would that not push them 5, 6 games above, right? And then it's like I said, with the
Yeah.
Diamondbacks, it's like I think that's going to be their main competition for a wild card spot. They're going to have a chance to play them a lot within their division, right? So it's like at the end of the day, I think it really is going to come down to who kind of outperforms each other in those matchups for kind of like those like threshold uh segments of the season. But at the end of the day, I believe in a team that won 3 World Series championships over 10 years and still largely has a lot of the organizational pieces, not necessarily the same players, but the same organizational pieces that were present back then. So they know how to win. Not to throw up too old of a term there, but they know how to win. And so, yeah, adding pieces to a team that already knows how to win, that has to be a good recipe for success, right?
One more thing on the Giants, because I think we touched on it, is that Jung Ho Lee is fascinating.
That's a great point. Yeah, we weren't talking about him as a contributor, and I think that he is. Oh,
Because
yeah, good.
because I'll say this. So he was known, if you're unfamiliar with Jung Ho Lee, basically think about him as like a Luis Suarez, Stephen Kwan type hitter, right?
Right,
Doesn't swing and miss, especially in the zone. I think his zone contact rate in the KBO, in the Korean Baseball Organization last year, was like 92%.
right.
That's very similar to Luis Suarez last year. And in spring training, he hit a ball 110 miles an hour or 112 miles an hour, which, according to some data we have access to, may have been a personal record in a game.
That's
So if he
crazy.
has the ability to smash balls like that at like without having a lot of width, that's a really interesting piece. Now we're worried about the velo potentially because he wasn't seeing triple digits as often in the
Yeah,
KBO or even high 90s. But still, like this, it could be a rough couple months, but especially down the stretch, because I'm not expecting them to win the division. I think that's something that's very. I think we
yes,
can.
yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's yeah,
Unless
right.
the Dodgers have their team bust, like go off the side of a cliff or something, which God forbid, I don't
God
see them
forbid.
winning the division.
Exactly. Exactly. So like down the stretch, I definitely think he'll be more uh bigger contributor. Blake Snell, I don't know what's going on with his regimen right now. If he's season ready, Robbie Ray is
Yeah.
going to return. This is to me, I've second half very interesting team, and I'm really fascinated to see how they start the year with all these weird pieces.
100%. I agree. All right. Nice, man. Let's move on to our next take here, which is going to be my first take, which is JT Realmuto is no longer a top 5 catcher in baseball. Does that take make the cut?
Okay, I need to work my
Well,
way through this.
I got a couple things that I wrote down, so you go ahead and think
Okay.
about that. I'll throw them out there. So there were 20 players per Fangraphs last year that had a
Okay.
higher WAR as a catcher than JT, but that's not necessarily what concerns me the most about that, right? I mean, WAR is subjective to ups and downs year
Sure.
to year, but let me just name a few of the superstars we can say undeniably are above him, being Adley Rushman at this point.
Adley.
William Contreras, I would say undeniably is a
Okay.
couple year stretch that like he has hitting potential that there's just no way Remuto's gonna,
Okay.
equal. Sean Murphy, I think so as well. Overall, just his abilities at the plate as well as defensively. And then you can even throw Will Smith and Cal Raleigh in there. At least last year were a lot better than him.
Okay.
Will Smith has been very consistent as well. But even all of that considered, I think the biggest thing to me that hurts my perception of him as a top 5 catcher is the fact that his framing last year was just abysmal. And when
Okay.
he's succeeding, when he's at his best, he's one of the preeminent defensive catchers in baseball. And he's actually had really good framing numbers in the past. So to me, that leads me to kind of like one of two conclusions. One, they had a bit of an organizational change in how they were perceiving how to approach things like framing, right? He was kind of being trained to this new approach and that caused some sort of aggression. Or
Mhm.
two, he's becoming a little bit less athletic. And that's potentially affecting him because I know that he sets up in very athletic stances behind the plate.
Mhm.
That could potentially be affecting him in terms of his ability to yank strikes back into the strike zone. So but regardless of whatever the reason is, for me, it's like unless he has that elite defense to go with his hitting, which has always been like pretty decent, especially for a catcher. But now that we're
Of
seeing this
course.
new crop of like young catchers that can go out there and throw up a 275, 380, 450, it's not necessarily going to keep pace with that. I don't know how I could justify putting him top 5 next to those guys. Definitely, in my opinion, still top 10, but top 5, I don't think so.
Okay. So here. Okay. I I see the logic train you're going down, but for me, I need to see one more year of him not having, out of respect for JT in his game, I'm still gonna have him in the top 5. So no, I'm gonna say the take doesn't make the cut. However, if the framing is still down in 24, defense isn't still, I mean, he still is an elite pop time. Like
Great at
I
blocking.
know, great block. I know he can produce at the plate. If he has another regression, then I'm on board. Like it's okay. Like he just aged a bit out of it. It's
Right.
fine. He's still very good, not as elite anymore.
And I think that that's a great point as well. And another thing that, always concerns me with catchers. I'm probably, in terms of how I perceive catcher regression, maybe a little bit more on the liberal side of the aging curve. I definitely am waiting for every catcher, currently playing that's having good, consistent success to just have that season where they fall off a little bit, right? So for
Mhm.
me, based on some of those peripherals, I know his sprint speed was down a little bit as well. I think that regression is starting again. I don't think it's going to be as steep for him. He's incredibly athletic for a catcher, even considering if he ends up like
Yeah.
having a regression. I still think he's going to be very good, but top five at this point for me is a bit of a stretch. But I can totally respect like keeping him in there, if for nothing else than just his large body of work. Because at this point, he still has one of the most consistent bodies of work in baseball actively for a catcher.
So I'm gonna do a little. I'm gonna search a number real quick because
Mhm.
this is interesting to me. Is that although the yeah okay so although the defense may have regressed a bit last year, which it did, I'll definitely say that. Like there is value, like the fact that JT Realmuto still able to catch over 130 games a year is so
That's a good
valuable,
point.
right?
That's a good
Because
point.
I'll say this, right? So I think a player that is excellent, even though he had a pretty rough slump in the back half of the year, is Sean Murphy,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
However, when you when he splits catching duties a lot with Travis d'Arnaud, and
Right.
they're both very good players. Murphy's better than d'Arnaud. I think we can all agree on that
Yeah.
roughly, but still, like when you have a guy like that, I'd rather have Remuto. The fact that a catcher that catches almost every game of the year, like obviously he had the down year defensively, even though he still had value in other ways other than framing. I think there is some value and respect from a catcher who is behind the dish every day.
I just can't see ranking him above other guys that I think are going to have better peripheral stats. I do get the argument though that you'd rather have him on your team relative to somebody who's going to catch 30 less games than him or 20 less
Yeah,
games. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
see, I think I see where your logic is. I think we have different perspectives on it, but
Yeah.
I just thought about that in the moment about the games caught thing, and I just found the stats pretty interesting. So in the last 2 years, JT Realmuto has led baseball in games caught,
Yeah.
like as a catcher, right? In 2022, he was at 133, and second place was Sean Murphy at 116. So
That's
that's
pretty insane.
17 more games. And this year he was at 133 again, and second place was Cal Raleigh at 128. 5 games, not as big of a difference, but still. That's
Yeah.
133 games back to back in the load management era of MLB. This like I'm gonna give him his flowers.
That's
That's
fair.
all I'm saying.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
I'm gonna give him his flowers.
That's a great point. Yeah, and again, a lot of that does come down to how you value a catcher, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like, your ability to be out there every day is in some ways even more valuable than like a lot of other players who are out producing you in some of those more peripheral stats. So I totally get that. For me, I'm a huge fan of someone like William Contreras. I really do think that he's going to
Same.
take a step forward, and it's it's hard, right? Because I don't want to disrespect, especially like you bring out these stats, and I don't want to disrespect Real Muto because I
Oh
still
yeah,
see
no,
him as
no.
one of the best. But yeah, it's just it turns into like there's so many superstar backstops for me personally that yeah, cracking top five is difficult. But again, I totally do get where you're coming from.
The depth of the catcher is awesome, by the way. I just want to say that the depth.
Yeah,
I love catchers. Like it's
yeah,
something like because the grind of that position and like the talent we have at catcher right now is awesome.
and better than we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I feel like at least, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man, what you got for your next take?
So I'm gonna talk about probably is controversial the right word? Maybe polarizing. Controversial is definitely a word. Most polarizing player in baseball right now, MLB right now, right? I'm not talking about, someone who's not in MLB right now.
Yeah,
Fernando Tatis Jr. Weird year when he came back in
yeah.
from suspension. Platinum glove winner in right field, but that was not amazing.
No,
One,
not what he once was. That's for
right?
sure.
Okay. So 1 year back under his belt. He's still young. 2024. Fernando Tatis Jr. top 3 MVP finish. Does that make the cut?
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say yes. Funny enough, I'm gonna say yes.
Oh,
My initial feeling on that is kind of like think about the talent that he's gonna have to face. But you know what? This is the number one reason I think that he has a good chance to do it, and it's the fact that Shohei is not gonna pitch this
there you
season.
go. That's really
So,
smart.
so because of that, we already removed one of our top three, right? So it's like who else are we gonna look at here? Acuna, Betts. Who else, right? Freeman. I love Freeman. Freeman's amazing, but Freeman's a first
Mhm.
baseman. So it's going to be hard to justify that whole realm of production he's not going to have uh, when it comes to some of those or some of those more cumulative stats like WAR. And if Tatis can combine close to his same offensive production from 2021 with what he was able to do in right field last year, we could be seeing a 10 WAR season from him, right? We could be seeing levels of production that we haven't seen since Aaron Judge's 2022 and Mike Trout's every other season before that. But so because of that, I think that, it's hard to predict things like MVP rankings, right? Because at the end of the day, anyone can get hurt. Anybody can go through a
Of
prolonged
course.
stretch of bad luck, right? Even, which by the way, Tatis Jr. was one of the top 10 most unluckiest hitters last year when it comes to XBA. He was crushing the ball
Should know that.
consistently. Yeah, he was crushing the ball consistently all season. So I think that a lot of those are going to end up going more his way, especially because his line drive rate has always been so good and his speed's insane. So even when he's topping balls over the shortstop, he's got a good chance to beat it out relative to a lot of the other guys who might be considered on that list. So for me, top three, right up there with Betts, Acuna Jr., and Tatis. I see him totally there for 2024.
So I mean I agree because I brought the take to the table, but I think an interesting thing about Tatis, like you said, is I I like looking at that point you brought up is who how many players in baseball right now have the skill set to get us a 10 WAR season or a WAR total around 10?
Exactly.
Because for example, weirdly enough, like Ronald Acuna Jr. isn't necessarily a guy who can
He
do
is
that
not
at the
a
moment with his current defense.
nope.
Like, dude, this dude had a 40-70 season, hit 335, and was only in the sevens or oh sorry, low eights. I think he
Yeah,
had
low eights.
8.1 F4 roughly,
Yeah.
which is by the way, fantastic
Elite. Amazing. Yeah.
MVP 100th percentile season. No disrespect to him,
No.
but it's like there's truly something special about the 10 WAR season. And the guys who are able to
Yes.
do that, the Betts, Trout, Judge, Bonds,
Right.
like no one flukes their way into a 10 WAR
No.
season, right?
Exactly.
And I think, like you said, if Tatis is able, because here's the thing. I don't think the whole this is the elephant in the room. I don't think the
Yeah.
whole PED thing really had an effect on his play because
No, I
I
agree.
think in my opinion, I genuinely think, and maybe this is me being naive, I think he made a very immature mistake with either whether it was purposeful or not. Like I somewhat maybe believe that he took something on accident, which he still should have been suspended for. Not saying he shouldn't have, because it's just negligence. But I still think, or even if he was trying to recover faster, I think he made a very immature mistake, right?
Yes.
But I don't think 2021 was like some PD infused
No,
40
no, not
homer
at all.
campaign,
No,
right?
no, this is the thing. He was an elite player in terms of his OPS plus, basically everything that made
Yes,
Tatis Jr. before that. And so, unless we're
of
going to
course.
argue he was getting away with
There's
steroids for
always,
season, right, right. No, I think that's a little
I don't
extreme.
think
So,
so.
I agree with you. I think that what he did was he did something very immature. And then I think the worst thing that he ended up, his biggest sin was not addressing it head on, in perhaps the
Yes.
way that he could have. He's also had some issues with, right, his motorcycle and stuff like that. Like, he hasn't been seen as the most mature player. I think he did a lot last year, in my opinion, at least, to rebuild that image, in that he
I
went out,
agree.
learned a new position, played that position in an elite way. And last year, if you think about it, can you name me one thing Acuna Jr. did or I'm sorry, Tatis Jr. did that was at all notable when it comes to controversy? Not at all. I think he
No.
grew up. He realized it was a moment of reflection. He realized if I'm going to be like one of the faces of baseball, I have to take this more seriously, and he did so. So yeah, I totally see him making a rebound. He didn't play baseball for like basically a whole season. Like that's gonna do a lot in terms of forcing you to have to shake off some rust. So yeah, I 100% see him coming back to at least like a relatively similar level
Yes.
of production. 140, 150 OPS plus, something similar to that.
Two more things I'm gonna throw out quickly is
Mhm.
Otani not two-weighing. Soto leaving the NL, and also I don't even though I think people want to talk about this, I don't think Bryce Harper is really gonna play 140 games. Like he's always had some sort of issue, and even 2021, like he had a little some injury issues and stuff. He's played a lot of games still, but
Honestly,
I'll see it.
yeah,
I'll see it because Bryce Harper misses games. Like because he
yeah.
plays the game hard and stuff happens. I think Tatis at the very least could just be around enough to have a great finish. But second, another thing I want to just very quick. Something that makes me so angry about Tatis and defense is how people act like he makes plays harder than they should be.
It's the exact
I see that
opposite.
narrative. I see that narrative. It boils my blood
Seriously,
because it's the opposite. He
it's
makes
the
plays look
opposite.
so easy. Like maybe he has some like swag on it. But if any other player made the same exact play, I think people I don't think people would say a word. It's just because it's Tatis. People are like, oh, he's just trying to make highlights. Like, dude, you couldn't be more wrong.
Exactly. And it's like when you look at last year, what he was really elite at, his speed, insane. His range
Yes.
was extremely good, but his best factor, the thing that made him different on defense was his first step quickness, was off the charts,
Unreal.
99th percentile. And what that does is it makes a lot of the hard plays look easy and a lot of the impossible plays look hard. However, because a lot of those plays are basically impossible as he's trying to make them, it almost makes it look like he's making plays that he really shouldn't even be close to harder because he makes the impossible plays look achievable, if you know what I mean. Like a
Yeah.
shallow pop fly into right field is a great example where it's like he comes racing in and slides. We're like, well, why did he slide? When it's like your favorite player wouldn't have been within 10 feet of that ball, so you wouldn't even have considered that to
No.
be an eligible play for him to slide on. So it's like,
No.
yeah, he can get to so much that I think that people end up, yeah, he has such a larger body of stuff he gets close to. You can find things to hate on, but it's the same thing too, where it's like because of the steroids now, people want to present this narrative that he's overrated, he's this, he's that. MLB was also giving him a lot of shine, a little bit less last year, but still decent amount of shine, even coming back
Yeah.
from steroids. So it's like, he's become one of those faces that people want to hate. Same thing with Acuna, same thing with Judge, same thing with Otani, right? Where it's like, as soon as those guys start getting, relatively overexposed, then it's like it becomes cool to try to poke holes in their game. But it's really hard with Tatis, to be honest. And I think he has a chance to steal way more bases than he has, just based on his speed, and then also based on his willingness to run. I could see him easily throwing up a 40-40 season, which is insane to say, right? There aren't many players you could say could easily do that with their talent levels, but I think he 100% could.
A 40-40 season with 15 plus defensive runs saved.
Right. And I also want to make
This
it
is the talent we're talking about. This
exactly.
is
And like Betts, again, I love Betts, but we want to talk about like 10 more seasons. Betts does not have another 10 more season in him. I really don't
no,
think so. Because his
no.
offense is good enough. He still could have that level of offensive production, but his defense is starting to slip a little bit. His speed's not what it used to be. He actually had, if I do remember correctly, a little below average speed last year. And he's moving to a new position in shortstop. Like if he can play shortstop at an okay level, that'll be insane. So yeah, I don't see pretty much anybody else throwing up a 10 more season this year besides Judge if he goes thermonuclear and stays healthy, or
Exactly.
Trout if he can, find some way to just stay healthy.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
agree.
100%. All right, man, you want to move on to our next segment here, the more like quiz focused section of the podcast?
Of course. Of course. Do you want to present yours first to me so I can choke again?
For sure. So what I have today for you is a little bit different than we did last week, which is, or the week before that, which is I'm going to be doing an audience polling quiz. So I threw out a
Okay.
bunch of questions for my audience, essentially like, those poll questions where they can select a player. You're going to have to select what player you think the audience picked. And then after that, I want you to give me who you would pick and your reasoning. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one is, which of these players is currently providing the best value for their contract? We have Nolan
Okay.
Arenado at 31 million a year.
Okay.
Pretty decent so far, right? Bryce Harper, 26 million a year. Mookie Betts, 31 million a year, or Freddie Freeman at 27 million a year.
Oh, the audience picked. I
Yeah.
feel like I know for me, there's clearly a worst one.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to this player. He's awesome, but so who produced the most? because you kind of
A lot of it's stature too, because this is an audience
it's
participation quiz.
so I'm gonna go. I audience produces and money. Okay, I'm gonna say Bryce Harper. They pick Bryce
You are
Harper.
correct.
Yes.
47% of the people responded Bryce Harper out of
Yeah.
39,000 votes. Second was Freddie Freeman at 31%. Mookie Betts was third at 19%. And Nolan Arenado was dead last at 4%.
Yes, that's what I was talking about. Nolan, I love Nolan Arenado. He's kind of been not awesome since 2020, but it's fine. He had like outside of 2022, but like
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah, I was gonna say,
that's
I was like,
that's what I was gonna say. Nolan has this kind of stature among current MLB fans as being like the best third baseman in baseball. And I love
yeah,
Nolan. I've been a fan of Nolan
no,
since he made his debut, but at this point we just can't put him there. Especially after last year's regression, where it's like, do I see him coming back and like being a top three third baseman this year? It's gonna be tough. I really want to see the defense rebound because that was always where he, in my opinion, was
exactly.
like all-time levels of production. It was always really good in Colorado at the plate, but that always has a huge asterisk. But yeah, I really want to see him hop back. But yeah, who would yours be out of those
Okay,
four?
I I'd still go with Mookie Betts. Because
Yeah.
for me, the thing with Harper is that I think Harper got skewed to win that because it's 5 million less, and also the fact that like he had like the playoff runs
Mhm.
with Philly,
Yeah.
and Betts kind of didn't do great
A lot of that comes
because
down to value, right? Like how you perceive
yeah,
value. For me, I'm gonna be a little bit of a rebel here and say Freddie Freeman. 27
that's
million. And last year he
true.
basically almost had the same WAR as Betts.
Okay.
He's also, in my opinion, a little bit like he probably is the most consistent hitter in baseball since like 2017, 2018. Like every year, it's going to be the same thing between 140 and 160 OPS plus every season, bar none. Mookie Betts, I mean, he's going to give you extremely, productive years at the plate. He's going to
Mhm.
give you some good numbers in the field and everything like that. But for Freddie Freeman, being $4 million cheaper, which I mean that's not an incredible amount of money in today's game, but that is significant in this poll consideration. I'm gonna go ahead and say Freddie Freeman.
So I think I'm gonna go with Betts still, but I think for me, since 2018, okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start with this. Since 2018, Mookie Betts leads Major League Baseball in WAR.
Yeah. By a lot, if I
Just
do remember correctly.
by 5 wins,
Yeah.
and
Pretty
that's not
significant.
and that's not because Mookie Betts is the best player in Major League Baseball. I think people always misunderstand WAR. I think it's one of the detractors and people who like it is they say, oh, he has a higher WAR, he's a better player. No. Mookie Betts has a higher WAR than anyone because he's 95% as good as those guys, but he stays in the field more.
Exactly. And that's a
So,
skill in and of
and that's
itself.
a skill. And he's at the very worst competent at a few positions. He's an
Yes.
elite outfielder, very good at second, and like sure maybe if Mookie Betts is like a slightly below average shortstop, he's doing a good job this year. Like
Exactly.
that's as long
100%.
as long as he's not a liability, like he's doing his job plugging a hole.
Yeah.
I think
Shout out to Gavin Lux, man.
yeah,
Hopefully
sure.
his arm can find some semblance of what it used to be. Because that was a
I
little
feel for
rough
him.
in
I
early
feel for
short,
him.
yeah, in early spring training. All
Yeah.
right.
So yeah, so I'm still gonna say Betts, and I think it's just comes down to the fact that he's a great hitter. He does it year in and year out, and he has more versatility than Bryce Harper is now a first baseman, and in right he's kind of whatever.
Yeah.
And Freddie Freeman is a lead hitter, but he's just a first baseman.
Yeah, that's completely fair take. All right, which of these players has the best chance to hit at least 500 career home runs?
Okay.
So we have Bryce Harper. He currently
Okay.
has 306 home runs and he's 30 years old.
Okay.
Manny Machado at 313 home runs at age 30.
Mhm.
Mike Trout at 368 home runs, he's 31. Or Giancarlo Stanton at 402 home runs, he's 33. Who do you think the audience selected? Who'd you select?
I think this one, if I'm wrong, my heart's gonna be broken. I think me and the audience have the same view on this. It's still Mike Trout.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
53% of the audience said Mike
Okay.
Trout. Pretty
Thank God.
significant.
Thank
Um,
God.
but you know what? That was pretty much, it was pretty decent, right? It was a pretty gimme
Yeah.
question in a way. I
Yeah.
want you to guess the second highest.
Okay. Ooh.
What do you think the second highest is?
Right? Like, okay. I feel like it still has to be Stan.
Yeah, you nailed it, man.
Right?
24%. Harper at 20%, Machado at 3%. This is the comment that I made on that post, which is that I get why people are putting Stanton second. You're 402, right? You still tallied
That's what I'm
all those home
saying.
runs, right? You still tallied all those home runs. You're 33. He looks a lot better in spring training. I think he has a decent
Every
chance
he
to hit
looks
500.
better every year in spring training. Don't fall for it.
That's funny.
Don't
That's funny.
fall for
But you know
it.
what?
Don't
This
fall
year
for it.
he looks a little less muscular
He looks
this year.
slimmer. He
Yeah,
looks
slimmer.
slimmer.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's looking great. But this is my thing. Manny Machado has never had a full season where he hasn't hit around 25
Okay.
home runs, I don't believe, right? He's averaged around 30 home runs per 162 games. He also plays every single season a decent amount of games. He's
Okay.
also signed for basically 10 more years. If he hit 20 home runs for 10 years,
Oh
which
yeah.
again is the length of his contract, he mathematically gets in by default. So do I think that Manny Machado won't hit at least 20 home runs for each of the next 10 years? I think that he's got a really good chance. I think he has a better chance than Harper, to be honest. Because Harper,
Ooh.
I think Harper could easily go out there and hit you 30 to 40 home runs. I believe that. But I think Harper also is capable of having a devastating injury that could end up robbing him of a decent portion of a few seasons. Machado just doesn't, his body doesn't break down. And that's a huge portion of what you're dealing with when you're looking for something like the longevity to hit 500, right? There are very few guys out there
Mhm.
like your
Yeah.
judges who it's like, oh, they're just going to hit like 50 home runs per 162 games and do that for 10 seasons and sneak in, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
someone like Stanton, right? I don't feel necessarily the most confident Stanton's even going to do it just because of how bad he's been breaking down for the last 5 seasons. Do I see him for the next 5 seasons hitting 20 home runs a season? He could end up missing 130 games this year. And I could see him missing 130 games each of the next 4 seasons. Like there's no guarantee he's going to be on the field for even half the season. Trout, I love Trout. And again, I would pick Trout as well, right? If I had to put my money down on
Of
this and I'm
course.
betting, I'm putting Trout. However, Trout, 2 out of the last 3 years, he hasn't even hit 20 home runs in a season. There is like, and that's with including COVID. It's tough, right? It's tough when you're dealing with the
Yes.
kind of habitual injury history that he is. And on top of that, too, there's that degenerative back injury. So it's like, I think Machado is a pretty safe bet. I think that there's a good case to be made that all of these guys are going to hit 500. But I still think that Machado's being highly underrated. 3% is kind of crazy
No,
in my opinion.
honestly, you sold me because another thing with Machado, this is something I really love about him is his home runs are smoked. So Manny Machado,
Smoked.
so Manny Machado has the most, according to Statcast, Manny Machado is the most line drive homers, which is like a launch angle of like 25 or lower. I think that's the cutoff. And if you're watching this, I implore you to do this. Maybe after you finish watching. Um, go on Statcat, go on Baseball Savant, and literally just put the batted ball thing, the line drive, home run, Manny Machado, lasers.
Lasers.
And the thing is too, which is interesting, because one, you could either be like, okay, that may not age well, but two, another way you can look at it is, okay, like maybe there's a swing adjustment he can make as he ages, get some more air under it, get some more of those like line outs to left, like
Yeah.
maybe pop those over the wall, or not. Like I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a hitting coach here, but still, I'm just saying
My
Machado's home runs are earned. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right, right. And you know who I
Yeah.
think a decent comp is for an aging curve? Could be possibly someone like JD Martinez, because JD Martinez always had a high BABIP, but it's because he hits the crap out of the ball. So it's
Yeah.
gotten to the point now where he still hits a lot of line drives, but it's like, hey, what's the best hit in baseball when we're talking about probability of getting a hit beyond a home run? Line
Yeah.
drive, right center field, line
Yeah.
drive, left center field. It's going to get down a lot of the time, sneak it over the shortstop's head. So again, I see him having the pop to hit 20 home runs each of the next 10 seasons. And again, I could totally see him going out there and hitting 30 for each of the next 5. And then it's like, boom, he's already done the vast majority of his work right there. He can just coast on in with a couple more seasons of, mediocre play, and he'd still get 500. But okay. So next question. Which of these players has the highest ceiling?
Oh
Julio,
God.
yeah, 59,000 votes. People like this one. People were pretty engaged. Julio Rodriguez, Fernando Tatis Jr., we're just talking about him, Bobby Witt Jr., or Corbin Carroll.
Okay. So here's the thing. This is actually hilarious because we had the conversation before about 10 WAR seasons and we didn't mention J-Rod.
That's a great point.
J-Rod is one of those guys.
He's one of those guys, 100%.
Audience
Very
definitely
few.
didn't pick. Audience definitely didn't pick Tatis. I'm getting that out of my head. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll be happy. Okay. I don't think it'll be Corbin Carroll just because I don't know if he has the same offensive ceiling as the other guys. Actually, I think he's a better offensive ceiling than Bobby Witt Jr. But like the other two have this combination of defense, speed, and offense. So
Yeah.
I'm narrowing it down between J-Rod and Tatis. I'm gonna go J-Rod.
That's a great pick, man. 40%, you're 3 for 3.
Okay.
40% pick J-Rod. Now, here's the surprising thing. 27% picked Fernando Tatis Jr. Third was Corbin Carroll at 17%,
Yeah.
and last was Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah.
at 15%.
I love Bobby Witt. The other guys, like maybe Corbin Carroll's defense isn't as elite, because
Yeah,
doesn't have a great arm and he's in a corner spot with that great speed. But J-Rod is basically right now is Tatis without a PED suspension, like
right.
image wise. Like
Yes.
he just and he's right, like he's just so electric, and he's probably one of the only other guys who has a chance of a 10-win season because J-Rod could go 40-40 with a 285 average and have 10 defensive runs saved.
He
Like,
reminds
and
me a
everyone's
lot
like,
of,
oh,
right? Ken Griffey Jr. That's the comp that people
exactly,
throw up, and that's an
exactly,
insane comp to get. But at the end of the day, I think
exactly.
it is pretty relevant. I think that's
Yeah.
something that people are underrating Witt Jr. on a little bit is his raw power. The dude has some insane raw power.
Yes.
I could see
It's
him
fair.
going, going out there and hitting 35 home runs, which as a shortstop, if he can go out there and hit 35 home runs with the defense he posted last year and 50 plus stolen base potential, that's a dangerous ball player. I could see him throwing up an 8 WAR season, but at the end of the day, I do agree with you. He's not gonna. J-Rod's also my pick, right? Where it's like out of those four, I think he has the best chance, the most established track record over the last couple seasons. Tatis Jr., he's gonna have to prove it this year that he can come back and really throw up that elite
Yes.
offense.
Of
But
course.
I think the audience got it pretty right here. I too would put Corbin a little ahead of
Dude,
Bobby
yeah.
Witt Jr. Corbin has a real chance to excel defensively. One of the things that I saw with him that was kind of interesting was he did not perform defensively the best last year. He did not have overall the best defensive numbers. However,
Hmm.
he made a couple plays that were among
Yes.
the hard. He made the hardest play by an outfielder last year
5%.
by catch probability exactly. So
Yes.
I think that he has all the tools to do that. He does not never going to have an elite arm, but again,
No.
as an outfielder, I think we're starting to understand that your ability to like throw a guy out of base is heavily mitigated by where you are in the field, what positions you put yourself in.
Hmm.
So I would rather have a center fielder with elite range than, a right fielder with a great arm. So at the end of the day, I think that if he ends up playing a lot of center field, which is going to be dictated, they have a lot of really good outfielders, so he might not. But if he ends up playing a lot of center field, he could put up some good defense, put him in like a similar conversation as like Tatis Jr. If
Yes.
Tatis can't get back up to that elite echelon. But at the end of the day, I do think the audience got that right. All right, this is the last one. Then we'll move on to your quiz segment. Which of these players seem most likely to reach at least 400 career home runs?
Oh, okay.
Kind of a similar one, but I tried to select guys
Okay.
that were a little bit less of that kind of superstar stature when it comes to power specifically. Francisco Lindor, he's 29, he has 215 home runs. Jose
Hmm.
Ramirez, he's 31, has 216. Ozuna from the Braves, 33, 236 home runs. Or George Springer, 33, and he has 242.
That's I was not expecting Marcellus. I was not expecting him to be next. So I was like, I don't even know who I was expecting. That caught me by surprise.
I had to throw out that, where he's Ozuna from the Braves. You know what I mean? Like you might have thought of Ozuna from, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
like
gotta
yeah,
remember.
Roberto Ozuna maybe.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think. So okay, everything in my heart tells me to pick J Ram because he's like one of my favorite players ever. But ooh, okay, I think they probably would have to go with Lindor.
Yes, they did.
Dude, I'm cooking
60%
right
went
now.
with Lindor. Yeah,
Yes.
dude. 60% went with Lindor. Ramirez was second at 24%. Ozuna from the Braves was next at 10%. And then George Springer was last at 6%.
Yeah, I just think that one for that one, it's like I love a guy like George Springer. Like I said, J Ram, literally one of my favorite players ever.
Yeah.
And no, I think I don't know if Ozuna is just getting the love like that, but
Yeah.
Lindor he's long term locked up. He has the power to just do it. I think he'll sleepwalk his way into roughly around there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, when you throw out a poll like this, I think a lot of it's just about the stature of the player in the minds of the fans, but I do love how consistently it was like very logical thinking, very logical explanations in the comments as
Very
well.
awesome. Yeah.
Jose Ramirez, I think, is going to also pretty easily get to 400 just because last year was kind of relatively a down year when it comes to power for
Yeah.
him. He still hit 25 home runs, I do believe, or somewhere around 25 home runs. So, dude's just every single season going out there, doing his thing, hitting 25 to 30 home runs. I could see him going back to 35 too. I mean, he still has pretty great hitting statistics, also great hitting approach, always a high OBP. Ozuna, I threw him in there. What's funny is I think Ozuna is one of those guys who we can end up looking back on and seeing almost like a Nelson Cruz arc to his career. As he's getting older, he's still hitting a ton of really hard line drives on really a ton of really hard fly balls. So he hit 40 home runs last year. I could see Marcell Ozuna sneaking into the 400 race and almost like potentially going to where Cruz did, where he was kind of like borderline challenging for 500, just because he's like his age isn't necessarily going to affect his profile as a ball player, which has been the
Yeah.
same for like the last 5 seasons. He's bat first, pretty much bat exclusively. But again,
Well,
he
that
just
exclusive.
yeah, he hits the crap out of the ball. So I think he has a decent chance. Do I think he's a better chance than Lindor? No, not at all. But yeah, I do think he deserves a little bit more credit for that. Maybe not credit for anything else, but I'll give him credit for that. And then
Yeah.
Springer's a similar like profile
Yeah,
in my
I think so.
opinion. But
Exactly.
yeah. All right, my man. You want to throw out what's your quiz portion for this
Okay.
segment?
This is fun, and I think this is gonna be really fun for the audience watching right now because this is something I did in bed the other night because I was thinking, I'm like, how far can I get back? Okay, so so obviously you watch the World Series every year,
Oh yeah.
but can you tell me who the last out of the World Series was? Going, go just going as far back as you can, and you have three strikes.
The last out of the World Series?
Yes, yes. So the last batter to get out to end the season, basically.
The last batter to get out. Okay.
Yeah, like the last out of the last game of the World Series.
Okay. Ketel Marte was
Yes.
2023.
Ketel Marte is 2023.
Okay. Ah,
Oh, wait, okay. I'll tell you this.
hmm.
A lot of these names are like none of them are really obscure for the first like almost decade. They're all like very like known players, which
Right,
is
right, right.
funny.
Yeah.
But
2022 was obviously the Astros who got
who
out.
won? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It was the Astros and Phillies. Who got out? Was it Schwarber?
No.
Wasn't Schwarber.
But
Oh no, no, it wasn't Schwarber. It
it
was
wasn't Schwarber, but but
was it Marsh?
no.
I'm trying so hard
Think
to like
think Schwarber. Just think Schwarber. Like
oh dude,
this
I don't know. It wasn't Harper, right?
no.
Oh, this is tough because I feel like I can see the last out, but like the face is blurry.
Yeah, but like think just think Schwarber. Like who's like his spiritual success? Who's like his
Was it
twin?
Hoskins?
No, dude, come on. Who is there's a deep drive to left
Oh,
of
no way,
center.
it was Castellanos.
Yeah, it's Castellanos. Come on,
Right.
dude.
Oh my God, you're right. And then okay, then I'll throw out a couple more, which is Yuli Gurriel for
Yes.
2021, right? Was yeah.
Yes.
Um,
2020 was the Rays. Who was it?
it was Julio Urias was pitching.
Yes, he was pitching.
Was it Margot?
No,
Oh, it was a righty.
it was a righty.
Oh, dude. That's
Okay,
tough. Good.
okay. Okay, how about this? Do you think you could do the pitching side?
Yes,
I
I
think
think pitching time is
okay.
way easier.
You know, it's funny because I was gonna ask you which one you'd wanted to do because I thought hitters was a bit more challenging because like I have the image of the pitcher celebrating, right?
Exactly,
So
always.
do
Yeah.
okay, so do the opposite.
All right,
Let's
yeah.
try that.
Okay,
Pitchers, 2023. Josh Spores, okay.
Josh Spores, easy. Okay, so 2022
Houston.
was this is Castellanos. Was it Montero?
No, no. Come
Or
on.
it was
Houston's
Presley, Presley.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay. For some reason I remember that Montero was probably a different play in there. And then Will
Yeah.
Smith,
Yeah, well, yes,
Julio
Will Smith.
Urias.
Yes. Washington's a weird one.
Yeah, Washington was a weird one now that I think about it. Sean Doolittle?
No, this guy's a Dodger now.
Right, right, right. Ah, Washington. Dang, dude. Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
he caught Michael Brantley looking.
Yep.
Swinging, my bad, swinging. He caught Michael
Swinging,
Brantley
swinging.
swinging. He's not like he plays for the Dodgers now.
Dude. I don't know. I don't know, dude.
He's Daniel Hudson.
Daniel Hudson.
But it's funny though.
Yeah.
I will say this. Okay, so I will say this. So like, I'm gonna go over it back to 2010, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So hitters wise, it's Ketel Marte, Castellanos, Gurriel, Adames,
Yeah, Damas.
Brantley, Machado when Chris Sale just steamrolled him,
Steamrolled him.
Corey Seager, and then so like that's a pretty good list of names. The only weird
Yeah.
one is that Michael Martinez was the last out to end the.
What's funny is I would have known. Yeah.
You know Michael Martinez?
Oh yeah, that's if you gave me from 2015 through 2020, I'd have nailed it. Dude.
Reverse. Oh my god! And then it was Wilmer Flores, Salvi Perez, and then like Matt Carpenter, Miggy Cooper. Like it's kind of like a really nice list of names.
Yeah.
The mid 2000s get a bit weird. Weirdly enough, I remembered Seth Smith being the last out of 07, but I didn't remember David Murphy being the final out of 2011. The only name on this that I genuinely had didn't make sense to me at all was 2005 is Orlando Palmeiro, which was the Houston. Yeah, because like right, and then 2002. Funny enough, the last out of the 2002 World Series, where the Giants lost to the Angels, was Kenny Lofton. Isn't that
he
such
was
a, like,
everywhere? He was everywhere.
He was
played on 11 teams.
I knew he played for the Giants, but I was like, damn, like Kenny Lofton was the final out of the World Series. Like, that's so weird.
That's crazy, dude. Oh, that's a good one, dude. That's a good one.
Yeah,
I like those more miscellaneous ones.
Yeah, like that one I weirdly knew a lot of. But like I was because the pitching side for me, like I could breeze through that. I think Daniel Hudson, I may have had a Mike Montgomery for the Cubs.
Yep.
It's kind of weird.
Koji Uehara, Red Sox.
Yes. Yeah.
Bumgarner, 2014.
Of course.
Easy.
Sergio Romo.
Romo, 2012. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
What was 2011?
Jason Mott.
Jason Mott. Yeah, Jason Mott, dude. Dude, no one talks about Jason Mott anymore. What happened? And he was like really good. He was a dog there for like a solid 4 or 5 seasons, man. I love those like mid 2000s guys who bounced around in like bullpens. That's one of my personal like I absolutely like adore going through Baseball Reference and looking. Oh my God, Jason Mott had a 190 ERA plus in one season. It's so cool.
You know what's funny though? I'll throw this out there. Do you know? Can you name me a player who walked off a World Series and was also the final out of another World Series? They happened within 7 years of each other. Think about that.
Renteria.
Yes.
Right? Renteria.
Isn't that nuts?
Marlins and then the Red Sox.
And then was that isn't that crazy?
For the Cardinals, versus the Red
Sox.
Yeah,
for the Reds, yeah.
That is crazy, dude. And he ended up being the World Series MVP after that.
Yes, for the Giants.
Yeah, for the Giants in 2010.
He was low-key like a weird World Series legend. Like
seriously, he was everywhere, dude.
Did it all. Yeah, that's right. I forgot he won the World Series MVP.
Yeah, isn't that funny with the Giants of all.
What a career, man.
Yeah, seriously. And he never was all that like elite with the bat. When you look at his like career numbers, he was always so clutch when it mattered.
Yeah, 5-time All-Star though. Sneaky 5-time All-Star. Wait a second.
That's
sneaky 5-time All-Star.
For sure, dude.
Okay.
Alrighty, man. You want to move on to our last segment, which is, of course, going to be the meat of potatoes. It's going to be the title of the video, which is going to be our most underappreciated players. Not underrated, mind you, right? Underrated has kind of that, we were talking before the podcast, has in some ways now like a almost meaningless vibe to it, just because at the end of the day, the more you talk about someone who's underrated, the more rated they become. Underappreciated is more like, we acknowledge them, but maybe not as much as we should.
Yes, I think yes. So do you want to go first to lead off this?
I sure will, and I want to open with a question. Okay, I want to open with a question.
Perfect. I had a similar idea too, but
exactly. So name me, who's the top 10 pitcher in baseball right now? Just name me a random top 10 pitcher. Anyone.
Garrett Cole.
Okay, give me another one.
Kevin Gausman.
Right. How far would you have to go before you named Luis Castillo as a top 10 pitcher?
Ooh, Huh?
Be a while,
Okay.
right? You're not going to
Probably a
necessarily
bit.
think, yeah, you're not going to think about him necessarily as one of the top 10, but you know that right now he has the 12th best K per nine at 9.6 or 9.86
Mhm.
ever in Major League Baseball history. Not active, mind you. The 12th best K per nine ever at 9.86
Ever?
ever in baseball history.
EVER?
Yeah, that's crazy, right?
That's
He has
nuts.
he has the seventh best active ERA plus at 124 for his whole career,
Hmm.
124, and the 14th best active ERA. I know ERA isn't like the best out in the world in ways, kind of like batting average, but still at 3.54. Very, very solid in that respect. He hasn't had an ERA plus below 117 for any season in his career besides his sophomore campaign, sophomore slump. A lot of guys have had it. And then he's had an over 10 K per nine in a full season 3 times and just finished in top five in Cy Young voting in the AL. Isn't that
Dude, yeah.
crazy? Nobody talks about him though when you're talking about top 10 pitcher. I know he just got ranked by MLB in the top 10. He was ranked seven. Like all
He's ranked
this.
7?
Yeah, they had him at seven. Like
That's
all,
respect.
yeah, it was respected. I was kind of surprised to see that of all people in MLB with their not necessarily the best rating. They're
Wild
not known.
rankings.
Not Mike
Wild
Trout. Mike
rankings.
Trout is 19th, the 19th best.
Ozzy Albies not in the top 10
Yes, yes, yes.
for second baseman. That was
Yeah. He's not in the top
crazy.
10 players, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's just known for that. But they got that one right, where it's like on top of all of that, he has, in my opinion, one of the most iconic 1-2 combinations of baseball right now, which is that changeup,
So nasty. Dude.
fastball. Last year, what 47 straight fastballs as well. It's like
Awesome.
and he has a great ability to go four seam, two seam, changeup, four seam, two seam, changeup. Great slider as well, obviously. But that three pitch mix of his four seam, two seam, and changeup is one of the hardest to like barrel up. We can talk about
Yeah.
Case, right? And he gets a lot of strikeouts, obviously. But in terms of
Yeah.
just the hardest pitchers to make hard contact off of, he's one of the best in baseball. And he does it every single season. And yet we're still not talking about him like he's unequivocally a top 10 pitcher.
Yeah, I agree. I like that pick too. Like you said, like I think he's one of the more enjoyable pitchers to watch in the
Yeah.
game right now because he's so just like whatever, man. Like I'm just gonna blow a fastball by you. Yeah, good luck with this change. I'm just gonna attack you.
Right,
And
right.
that's what I honestly that's something I love about the Mariners in general because it's a
Yes.
similar thing with George Kirby too, where these guys were just gonna come at you like beat me, please.
Exactly.
My stuff's nasty. Like I'll like let's go. Like
It's all about
I love
right
those guys. Yeah.
pounding the strike zone with quality pitches relative to
Yeah.
trying to outthink everybody. It's really refreshing to see.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that pick.
For sure, my man. All right, who's your first one?
Okay, this is I'll preface this by saying this. I will state this. This is 100% kind of a biased pick because
Okay.
I have a personal connection to this player. I am from Long Island, right? Okay.
Got you.
So this player, like it means a lot because Northeast baseball, not great. But so when a player comes out of it, you have a connection to them. However, what this guy has done with his circumstance is truly remarkable. I don't think we talk about it enough. And it's Marcus Stroman. He is a Yankee now, right? And I don't even want to. I mean, I'm going to talk about that because he hasn't done a pitch yet. But since 2019, Marcus Stroman has not had an ERA above 4. He's tossed his worst ERA was this year. He made some starts, a little banged up, had a 3.95. But that's not even what I want to talk about. Okay? Because in Marcus Stroman's career, he's pitched to what's the exact number? My bad. A 116 ERA plus in 1,300 innings. Do you know Zach Wheeler in his career has pitched to a 115 ERA plus in 1,378 innings? I'm taking Zach Wheeler over Marcus Stroman, not trying to make that thing, but the fact that that's
That's a pretty
similar
crazy,
production.
yeah, comparable numbers
That's
there.
kind of nuts. Listen, Wheeler is a better pitcher than him. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to say the opposite, but like the fact that those numbers are comparable is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing with how numbers wise, he also has slightly better numbers than like a Trevor Bauer, for example. They debuted
Right.
around the same time. He's like a slightly better WAR and ERA marks are similar. But not even to talk about that. The dude is 5'7".
Yeah. I know that's one of the things I've always been a big fan about him. Made a essay video at him last year
Yes,
talking about how, in some ways, he's the most unlikely pitcher of his stature in baseball, just because
dude.
being that short and still being able to excel at elite level. And here's the thing: if you looked at his numbers on a sheet of paper, who are you thinking of? You're thinking of guys like Charlie Morton. You're thinking of guys
Yeah,
even like, if we want to go a little bit older, like Chris Young, where it's like, if you remember him from like
I
the
was thinking, oh,
Royals days, yeah.
that's a fun one.
Yeah, where it's like they're going to go out there, they're going to throw a ton of innings. They're going to not
Yeah,
necessarily strike out the most guys, but they're going to consistently put up good seasons that are going to give you a lot of depth for the rest of your team to kind of build around. But when you think about guys who kind of achieve those things, what is their stature? They're all 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", throwing power
yes,
sinkers, getting a lot. Like, you don't think, if you're thinking of guys that are shorter, someone like Craig Kimbrell, even, who used to be 5'11", then magically grew an inch when he turned 33 years old or whatever. Now he's 6 feet tall. You always think the shorter guys have to move more efficiently, ergo they have to throw harder, ergo they have to throw things like a
Mhm.
lot of four seamers up, right? That's kind of when I think about shorter guys, it's like they have to move that kind of with that kind of efficiency. And on top of that, you don't think about them as starters. If anything, they're going to be closers, right? Or relief pitchers. And that's kind of what he was seen as the beginning of his career. He has a chance to be a relief pitcher. But the fact that he's turned into one of the most dependable arms in baseball when it comes to year in and year out, throwing up 150 plus innings at
Yes,
like a decent ERA plus, like a good ERA plus, right? Like a
a very good
solid,
ERA plus.
solid 2-3
Yes,
starter at the height that he currently operates at. It really is insanely impressive. Especially again, coming out of the Northeast. That's like you said, that's a great point. That it's like he didn't come out of like the most
dude.
pristine baseball environment in the country
Not
either.
at all. Like, listen, Pat Med, that's where we went to high school. They've produced MLB talent. Like, that's people have gone there, like, and they've gone
Yeah.
to MLB. I mean, weirdly enough, so like I'm biased. The town I live in, the deli, has a sandwich called the Mats. You know, like
Yeah.
there's like like
Former,
so
yeah.
like yeah, but so the thing is though, I want to focus on the height because what he's doing is truly it's not unprecedented, but it pretty much is in the modern day of baseball. Because you're
Yeah.
thinking of pitchers, I'm thinking of Tyler Glass now, like he's big.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
or not even big, just
Kershaw,
like he's
6'4", right? Six
yeah,
three, six
yeah,
four.
sneaky 6'4". Like guys, you don't even realize. So since integration, okay, so since integration, 7 pitchers, 5'9" or less, have thrown 1,000 innings.
That's
Think about that.
crazy.
5'9". That's okay.
Five
Since
nine,
in,
right. Yeah.
since integration, there's only been was 7 pitchers to throw 1,000 innings at 5'9" or less, right?
Yeah.
Marcus Stroman right now has 223 career starts. The most starts for a pitcher since integration at 5'9" or less is 286. Do you know who it is? Because
Wow.
it's actually a funny name because he was in one of your videos recently. It's Harvey Haddix.
Harvey Haddix. I mean,
Harvey
yeah.
Haddix.
But
But the
Mr.
thing is,
13 game perfect or 13 inning perfect
yeah,
game himself.
yeah. But here's the thing: is that Stroman's only 50 starts away from that. So 2 years from now, because I believe this is going to happen, Stroman's going to be the leader in starts since integration for a pitcher 5'9" or less, and he's probably not even 5'7", if we're being
No,
honest.
he's no, to be
Yeah.
honest, he's probably more like 5'6", and maybe even it's
Yes.
like Jose Altuve, right? At the
Yes.
mythical 5'6", where it's like you see him next to Judge and he looks like he's 3.5 feet smaller than him. It's probably not 5'6", but yeah, he was 5'4", by the way. Jose Altuve, when he came into baseball, he was registered at 5'4" when he was
Yes.
like 22, and now he's 30, and all of a sudden he's 5'6". But for sure, it's insane. I love Stroman. I've always enjoyed Stroman. I know there's the things with like his antics. I think a lot of that's overblown, to be honest, just because there's
Yeah.
a real bias against players on social media, like kind of we'll say being relatively mouthy. It's like you have to be a superstar if you're going to be mouthy on. So that's not how it is, man. Like to even play in the
The
big
two-time
leagues,
All-Star.
yeah, if to even play in the big leagues, you already have to be so far past elite that you have the right to talk. But then when you're also as good as he's been, it's like just yeah, everyone's so hard on professional athletes for some reason, but
One more thing about
what?
Stroman is that if you lower the height to his listed height that we both agree he's
Hmm.
not at,
Yeah,
he has the most strikeouts for someone at 5'7" or shorter. And the guy who's second, Bobby Shantz, pitched in the 50s.
that's crazy, dude.
And so
Crazy.
no, okay, sorry. Actually, think about this. So Stroman's in first at 1,091, Bobby Shantz, who pitched in the 50s, is at 1,072, so near Stroman, but he passed him this past year. Number 3 is, funny enough, Foolish Bailey made a video about him. It's like his favorite baseball reference page. Connie Marrero at 297, so 800 back. This is where, like, he's truly, Marcus Stroman is an anomaly.
He really is.
No one his size should be throwing innings in a major league field, and he not only did it, he smashed it out the ballpark as a pitcher. Sorry, my bad. And he's a 2-time All-Star and just signed another big contract. We have
To
to give
play
this
with
guy
one of the
flowers.
preeminent teams in baseball in the Yankees, like one of the best statures.
What you don't like him as a guy or whatever? Not you. I'm just saying people. Like, if you don't like him as a guy, whatever, you have to respect what he's done at his height because he's truly one of a kind.
100%, dude. 100%. We're talking about inches, right? So I had a little in my notes here. I have a guy that I included here with that phraseology. So Starling Marte is my next pick. He's posted a 4.6 WAR over 162 games for his career. That's higher than Xander Bogaerts, Andrew McCutchen, and like I said about the notes, he's just an inch behind Jose Altuve at 4.8. Pretty insane, right? 4.6 more over 162 games.
4.6 is crazy.
Better than a couple different guys that we would consider to be borderline Hall of Famers, right? Andrew McCutchen, there's now that conversation whether he's a Hall of Famer. Jose Altuve, besides the sign stealing stuff, I think we can both still unequivocally say he's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. I'd vote for him.
And I think Bogarts is going to get close, especially because he's managed to improve his defense over the last couple seasons. If he can stick on the field, up the middle, I know he's probably going to play out of second base this year, second base, third base, with Machado coming back from injury. But still, he's still been productive and he's got a lot of good counting stats. I think he's going to be at least borderline. But Marte, we're not even thinking anywhere close to that. But he has like similar peripherals in that respect. He's won 2 Gold Gloves in his career, has a 287, 343, 445 for his entire career. Pretty decent numbers, almost a 290, 350, 450, pretty good. And then before 2023, which really dragged down his career numbers, they were even better than they were last year, but last season was pretty terrible. He had posted back-to-back seasons at a 132 OPS plus. Isn't that crazy? I didn't think about him as a 130 plus OPS plus guy, but that's all before mentioning his speed, which he's averaged 41 steals per season over his career, while in the process tying the second highest active amount of stolen bases behind Elvis Andrus, who has 347. Marte's at 338, and he's actually one of only 3 active players to have over 140 home runs with at least 250 stolen bases. The other 2 guys, Trey Turner, and we were talking about short guys, Jose Altuve as the third guy. But yeah, just overall, one of those guys who's had kind of a sneakily solid career. I don't think he's going to be a Hall of Famer, right? He's all very good. He's consistent every season, but he's been an extremely productive big league bat. And, we'd talked about this before when we were kind of like speaking about underrated guys off camera, but just he came into big leagues with a lot of expectations. He was almost like being portrayed as he was like the second coming of another McCutchen type. And when he wasn't quite up to that, feels like he kind of got tossed to the side. Now people I feel like if you asked him like what his stature is, they'd almost think about him as like a 4th outfielder, but it's like he's been way better than that in his career. He is a solid bat at the top, top 2 in your lineup. If he's having a down season, maybe 7, but he's still always that guy. He's always that guy who's going to go out there and give you some decent production over a decent amount of games, do everything good enough,
Yeah, and I love this conversation, and I love bringing it up whenever I can. Is the concept of like fatigue, prospect fatigue, superstar fatigue, just player fatigue, where I'm worried that it's going to happen to a guy like Jason Dominguez, where this guy was dubbed the alien at 16 years old compared to Mickey Mantle, Mike Trout, and Bo Jackson. But right now he's an amazing prospect, and his ceiling is not ceiling, but like there's a chance that he'll probably end up being like a George Springer type, which is an amazing ball player. But some people are going to be disappointed. It's like JD Drew had an amazing MLB career, like a 400 OBP, 120 OPS plus guy. But people always just labeled him as, he's disappointing because he was supposed to be Mickey Mantle. Similar thing where like Starling Marte never really became McCutchen, but he was an amazing version of Starling Marte.
Yeah, and I think you can even see that in the All-Star voting.
Yes.
Marte has never been considered really a perennial all-star contender. And it's like a lot of seasons he had an inside route to being like at least the best player on his Pirates team, or even for like last year or the year before that with the Mets, where he was like undoubtedly one of their best hitters. It's like he's never put forward as that guy who's like gonna be one of your main guys you kind of think about in terms of production in a lineup. But hey, back to back 132 OPS plus guys, there are dudes out there that put up a 120 OPS plus that have a way bigger stature than he does, and he literally did it for multiple seasons in a row. So I really like Starling Marte, and like you said, that superstar prospect fatigue, it's real. I mean, even Springer, he almost had a 40-40 season in the minor leagues, right? So we're talking about things like even like the speed of the Martian relative to him. He had that speed, he had that profile, but now it's like we think of Springer, and it's like he's a solid outfield bat. He's always
Yeah.
going to have decent production, and we shouldn't look at that as if that's some kind of disappointment. To even be successful at the big leagues in any regard, no matter what your stature is impressive. But to be solidly productive, it's even more so.
Yeah, no, you're right.
100%, dude.
I can I move on to
Yeah,
my
yeah. Go ahead,
second
man.
part?
Next one.
No,
Next one.
I just want to make sure you had all your notes in and stuff.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, for sure.
This is I went a bit unconventional with the next one because it's not necessarily a guy who is underappreciated now. Actually, no. Because I would say he's not underappreciated now because he's not the same player he used to be.
Mhm.
But he had a weirdly amazing like peak in the 2010s that I feel
Mhm.
like doesn't get talked about, and that's Carlos Santana.
Good
Okay,
pick.
think about this. 2011 is when Santana makes his like full-time debut. Like he had
Yeah.
a cup of coffee in 2010, was actually amazing at a 140 OPS plus and like 150 plate appearances. So from 2011, which is like his real like first season, to 2019, so the rest of the decade, that's 9 years.
Yeah.
Where do you think he ranks among guys in seasons with an above average OPS plus with at least 600 plate appearances? So like a full years with the plate appearances.
Where do I
How
think he
many does he
ranks?
have in those? How many does he have in those 9 years? And where does he rank among the MLB?
I'm gonna say, does he have seven? I feel like maybe eight. I'm gonna say eight, and then I'm gonna say that he's ranked what, third, second, maybe third.
Carlos Santana put up a 100, at least a 100 OPS plus, and took at least 600 plate appearances every single year, which
That's
was he
crazy.
was the only player to do that every single year of the decade, basically.
I was thinking maybe Votto, but I know he had some injuries in there. He
Year
wasn't the most productive. Good.
And that's the thing, right? Because I'm not saying like consistency doesn't automatically make you the best. I'm not
Right.
saying he's the
No, not at
best,
all.
but at the same time, it's like, dude, that's a dude who switch hitter day in and day out, literally took 600 plate appearances a year and was good with those. Another thing about him, because so no, I mentioned he made his debut in 2010, didn't really was a full-time guy until 2011. Since 2006, right? So we're going back to 2006. So like he wasn't
Yeah.
playing for a few of these years, right? Since 2006, Carlos Santana has 15 walk-off or go-ahead home runs in the ninth inning or later. That is the most in baseball in a
Since
span.
2006. You
Six.
throw it all the way back there. That's great. I never thought about
Yeah.
him as like the most clutch guy. I always thought of him as walk guy, right? Where it's like he's one of those few guys in baseball who he's even though he is a first baseman, he's not necessarily going to give you that 35 home
Mm-hmm.
run plus pop a season. He did have a couple seasons like that, but most years he's
Big
not going to
walk
do it.
guy.
Yeah, most seasons he was like 20, 25 home runs, but he's just got an
100
ability to
walks.
walk, right? Where it's like you almost think to yourself, okay, if he's doesn't have the highest batting average and then he doesn't have the most power,
No.
why would pitchers pitch around him? He's just great at working the count. And so I always thought about him as a guy who's a perennially, 350 to 400 OBP, but I never thought about him as a guy who's going to go out there and smack walk-off dinger after walk-off, game tying home runs. That's crazy. That's really interesting to hear about him.
He no, the thing is though, like he really was. Like even now, like this year, he had one on the Pirates. Like he had a walk off for the Brewers after he was dealt, but he had like that really fun walk off for the Pirates with that dance, and
That's
then
true. Yeah,
for
yeah, that's right.
for the Mariners, he had some clutch homers in 2022. And okay, how about this? So speaking of that, since 2010, a late and close situation is anything in the seventh inning or later where basically like the game's tied or like you have a chance to tie it, right?
Yeah.
He has 53 career homers in late and close situations since his debut, and that's also the most in baseball.
That's crazy. That funny enough, we were talking about foolish baseball earlier, and it's like that reminds me a lot of Jesse Winker and what he was able to do
Yeah,
last season, where it's like the being productive in big spots doesn't make you, like you said, the best baseball player, but it really
no,
is a skill that teams value, right? Like you might have wondered last season when the Brewers went out and got him, like why this guy does not have the best peripherals for a first baseman, right? He's not going to hit the
no.
best. He's not going to have the best OPS plus, which is really valued for a first
Mhm.
baseman. But it's like, no, you need guys who know how to win, right? Again, you want to be careful how you use that term, but being able to be clutch in big spots and not having your heartbeat get too up and being able to stay composed is a skill. And that's insane. I had no idea that he was that far into elite territory.
The thing is though, like from like I said, the 2011 to 2019 stat, right? How he was above average every year with at least 600 plate appearances, like mixed into there is basically just 120 plus 120 OPS plus seasons with like he sprinkled in a 136 and then he had like two down years at 105 and 102. But like I'll take that, especially when you're on the field every day hitting and weirdly, you know what's funny? Weirdly enough, because I noticed this, he he graded out as like a really good defender this year at first base, which is like kind of funny.
Yeah,
But still, like I still think there's value in his bat. Like last year, he was actually an above average hitter. I mean, it
he
is
was.
first, so being above league average is below average for first base, but still, like
Yeah,
I
he's
think
a
his
guy you want on your team.
and so the Twins signed him, which I love that pairing as you know like
Yes,
veteran guy on a team that mashes. Like I kind of love that.
100%.
I just wanted to I wanted to give some praise to Carlos Santana because I thought his run in the 2010s kind of goes under the radar. Like he said, he played for some great Cleveland teams. He was clutch for them, and he was on the field every day.
He sure was. And you know what?
Yes,
On top of that too, switch hitter, right? Or it's like
yes,
how many high stature first
I love
baseman
it,
switch hitters do you see in the
love it,
modern game? Not as many as you think. Mark
love it.
Teixeira, I mean, maybe reminds me of Mark Teixeira. Speaking of high OBP first baseman switch hit, love that guy.
I
But you know,
yeah.
okay. So my last one here, similar profile. Funny enough, when we're talking about first basemen who have really good OBPs, kind of can like mash more than people thought they could. Brandon Belt, 124,
Oh,
124 career OPS plus. That's higher than Nolan Arenado, Xander Bogaerts, or Marcelo Ozuna in their career. All guys that are seen as like extremely productive with the bat. And that includes last year when he finished with a 136 mark last season.
yes,
254, 369, 490 slash. The big thing that's held him back in his career has been his power. People thought that he was going to be a guy who could hit at least 30 home runs a season. Some people were like, oh, he could hit
no,
40. But he, I think his biggest problem, honestly, when it comes to that was where he played. Like San Francisco is just a death, like a complete death sentence for a left-handed hitter. It's unless your
yeah.
name's Barry Bonds, and have a special regimen, diet, and exercise regimen. But aside from that, he still was extremely productive. He was racking up 3.4 WAR per 162 games throughout his career, which is totally solid for first baseman, considering the fact that it's harder to rack up WAR defensively at that position. And he's had three
Yes.
separate seasons where he was over four. He had a couple of years, funny enough, 2019, 2020, 2021, where he was like on track to hit 30, 40 home runs in a season, but then there was COVID. There was also a couple injury issues. So I'm not saying he didn't have his peak, but still, regardless, he also was a very good defensive first baseman as he has 41 DRS over his career over 13
Oh
seasons.
wow, that's actually nuts.
Yeah, mostly tallied at first base. He had some horrible seasons where he would play some outfield. That really dragged down his like DRS overall, but it's like on the way back from recovery from sickness. But yeah, man, just again, really underrated. He's totally a guy. He's still unsigned right now. I want to see him go to a team. I thought him and the Blue Jays were a really good bet to kind of reunite. Ended up going
Huh.
with Joey Votto, but maybe somebody like like the Reds could use a veteran bat. Right?
Oh.
He's probably not going to start. He's probably not going to take the most at bats, especially versus lefties at this point. But I think he can go out there and play 80 to 100 games and throw up another 130 OPS plus and just not hurt you defensively when he's out there and be overall a good contributor on a team that needs some veteran presence.
So I think I I love that. And I actually didn't know he was unsigned right now, which is kind of crazy because I feel like
Maybe
it's a
he's a
nice
Boris client.
Wait, that's funny. He could be, you never know, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, I think Brandon Belt would be a very interesting, at the very least, right now, a very interesting bench bat to mash against righties, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
And I like how you said he was on pace to hit 30 home runs, and then like God stepped in because so the Giants haven't had a 30 homer season since Barry Bonds,
Yep.
right? Which is a stat like I found one day, and I remember like a day later
Crazy.
a day later it was all over the internet. I was like I felt like I maybe had a piece in that. Maybe not. I'm joking, but
Yeah.
but for real, like I think an interesting thing about Brandon Bell is like okay, strikeouts bit of an issue, even though the walk rate was high, but he's he is incredible when he does make contact at making very quality contact. So
Yes.
Brandon Belt last year, sweet spot percentage is a stat that maybe it's basically a ball hit between like a good launch angles at a like I'll find the exact definition because I want to get the numbers right because it's 8 and 32.
Yeah.
It's a ball hit between 8 and 32 with launch angle, right? Number one was Freddie Freeman. Number two was Luis Ariz. Number three was Brandon Bell.
And he's just been doing it his whole career. I mean, dude, it
Yes,
reminds
it
me of
does.
going back to 2021. I wanted to pull up what his exact numbers for that season. Do you know during that year he finished one home run short of becoming the
Yeah,
first
in like
Giant?
98 games.
97 games.
Yeah.
That's right. 597 slugging, 2 straight seasons. If you look at his body of work
Yes.
between 2020 and 2021, he played in 148 games and he hit 38 home runs with 1,000 OPS and a
That's messed up.
165 basically OPS plus. Yeah,
So
and then
messed up.
and then the season after had some more injury issues, and then last season back to mashing. 136 is really impressive, especially when you're considering it's a guy who isn't getting the most reps. He only played in 103 games. 404 plate appearances means that he wasn't even necessarily playing all of those games. So, yeah, you're right. The swing and miss, could be better over the course of his career. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing as Santana. It's like you want these
Mhm.
veteran guys on your team to go out
Exactly.
there and help you win late and close games. Very, very difficult, especially when you get like a wild card spot or something like that. Where it's like the whole slog of the postseason's coming through. We have to have guys that are ready for it. And he definitely has not been the best hitter in his career. 215 for his career batting average with a 304 slugging. But I don't know. With certain guys, you almost just feel like that's less of any kind of approach thing and more just like kind of circumstantial for whatever the
Mhm.
year ended up being. Because yeah, he's Brandon Belt. He doesn't try to be anybody but Brandon Belt. And like I said, I could see him having a similar level of production as somebody like Joey Votto this season, especially because Votto's reinvented his game to be more power centered at this point.
I wonder who's gonna sign him because like I like your Reds pitch, even though I feel like it'd be a PR nightmare if they re-signed Brandon Belt. It's funny enough, if they signed Brandon Belt instead of re-signing Joey Votto.
Yeah.
I
They
I feel
got to replace him now, right? I mean, I guess
I feel
technically they
like
could throw it to a younger guy, but
yeah, I feel like a contender, not a contender, but like one of those borderline teams, like for example, the Reds was a good example. Like I don't know, I wonder what Brandon Belt would be like on the Giants. Wonder what that would
back,
look
throw
like.
him back on the Giants, dude. That'd
Throw
be
him back
great.
on the Giants. No, but
Dude,
no,
yeah.
yeah. I like
Yeah.
I big Brandon Belt guy. Was he a good postseason performer? No, right?
No, no. Like I just
Not
said,
not not
no, for his
no.
career, he hit 215,
Yeah,
304
yeah,
slugging, like just
yeah, yeah,
nothing that was stand out. But
yeah,
like I said, I mean, he had a couple 2014 in the against Washington. He had
yeah,
278, 316, 444. It's like he's had like little pockets in there really well. He did good in the World Series in 2014 as well. Honestly,
yeah.
2014 was his best postseason period. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge a guy by,
Of
three. He's
course.
had three separate postseason trips if you don't include 2023, which I mean, like that was 2 games, so it's hard. He did strike out 5 times in 2 games, but regardless, like he's solid, man. He's like you said, like one of those guys that you want in your team, and man, I'd love to see him on the Reds. But just give me another. I want something that reminds me of Joey Votto in Cincinnati again. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, that's true.
I'm
That's
not
true.
ready to let him go, dude. It sucks to
I
see.
like Toronto for Belt, but like you said, Votto, like I mean, yeah, if Votto was gonna play anywhere else except Cincinnati,
That's where he
it
was
would,
gonna. It's like Kershaw, right? If Kershaw wasn't gonna
yeah,
sign with the
it has to
Dodgers,
be
he was gonna. It
Texas.
has to be the Rangers.
Has to be he knows funny like he even said that, which to me is so funny. But like he said, he's like, yeah, I'd only either play for LA or Texas. But the fact that like he says that is funny to me. I'm
Right,
not gonna lie.
100%. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
it reminds you to some degree that some of these guys, it's less about like maximally negotiating. Someone like Scott Boris, right? He could potentially take notes there. It's like I don't want the most money I can possibly get. I want a good circumstance for myself. So it's like give me. It reminds me of something Pedro Martinez said one time, which is give me an offer that's respectable. I'm gonna give you a discount. I'm telling you right now. That's what he said to the Red Sox when
yeah,
they were trying to work out a new deal. I'm telling you right now, I will take a discount. Just give me something that's respectable. And then, of course, with Pedro, unfortunately, they gave him a disrespectful offer, trying to take
yes,
advantage of that. He then left, much to the unfortunate detriment to both sides. I feel like he could have stayed in Boston and really like rode out the rest of his playing days there, and it would have been great. But same thing there, where it's like, man, dude, Kershaw. It's so nice to see him like kind of have that allegiance to the Dodgers. I really hope he retires a Dodger. I don't want him to go to the
yeah,
Rangers in his last season. I'd like to
yeah.
see him
No,
win a
yeah, for
World
him.
Series too, other than a Mickey Mouse one. But you know,
No, but yeah, no, I would love to. Yeah, I really don't hope Kershaw leaves the Dodgers at any point. I think that would just be too sad.
he is a
Like,
Dodger. Like that's
like
his thing.
he is like that. Yeah, like it's too intertwined with his like his aura. I don't know. My last player
Okay.
is okay. I'm gonna put it like this. Bryce Harper. It's not Bryce Harper, but
Yeah.
I'm just telling you Bryce Harper's stats since 2018.
Okay.
Bryce Harper since 2018 has a 142 WRC plus, a 21.2 F WAR, and like a nice like 277, 395, 527 slash. Very good numbers, right?
Oh yes.
This player, the player I'm going to choose, has a 135 WRC plus, so not quite as
Wow.
good.
But still pretty great.
Very good. Um, he's a good defender. Nothing like he's a very he's a good defender. Not as bad as Harper. It's not like necessarily like a liability as Harper was in like 2018 and maybe some other years. And he has zero point 0.5 less WAR in around 80 less games in this span.
Wow. Okay.
Do you know who this is?
Not really. Who is it? Who are you talking about here?
Brandon Nimmo.
Brandon Nimmo. You know what? That makes sense. That makes sense. Go ahead.
Brand,
Give me the Brandon Nimmo breakdown.
So what's funny about Brandon Nimmo is I feel like someone I think I saw this narrative one time is that someone called him like a war merchant and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
like what does that mean? But
He's
like
augmented his game specifically to appeal to that's his thing. He's appealing to the
yeah,
war crowd.
yeah like yeah like nah like he's a being good at baseball merchant.
Yes.
Like that's his thing, right? Okay, no, but listen, war isn't the be all end all. Like I'd
No.
take Harper on my team over Nimmo, like if given the option. However, there has to be something said for a guy who has put up a 20.7 WAR since 2018. That's not that. That's like 6 years, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
with a 135 cumulative WRC plus. Brandon Nimmo also like walks at a very high rate. Like this is a guy like he's one of those quieter guys. Like that's I think that's kind of how I wanted to take mine. Whereas these guys who are there year in and year out, who how like what maybe some other superstars have better peak years, but then it's like okay, but here's like this like kind of weird middling year like we don't want to talk about. And then it's like oh
Right.
like they're amazing again. Like that's kind of Bryce Harper's whole career where it's like
Right.
let's not talk about like the whole back half of the 2010s. But then
Right.
like, oh my God, he's amazing again. Like that's literally, but like for Brandon Nimmo, when he's on the field, he produces. And there's I feel like we have to give more credit to the guys who just do that year in and year out. It's like Rafael Devers, like we talked about last episode, right?
100%. I was going to say that I think that that's one of the things that war kind of exposes. I love war as a stat. I think it's a great tool
Yes.
to evaluate some of the more objective aspects of player production. However,
Yeah.
it does slant towards those guys that can stay on the field because it's a cumulative stat, right? It's not the sexiest stat in the world because someone like Harper is never going to have the highest WAR in the league. Like we talked about that. He's never going to have a 7+ WAR more than likely now, unless he goes
Mhm.
thermonuclear and goes Barry Bonds on his offensive game. But someone like Nimmo still does expose why WAR is an objectively valuable stat, right? What is
Yeah.
WAR? Wins above replacement. The guy helps you win, right? And it's not in the same way necessarily that someone like a Brandon Belt or a Carlos Santana is going to help you win, where it's like with late and close production or with a lot of walks, but not
Hmm.
the most complete offensive game. Besides that, it's like he's the complete package. He's going to play you decent defense. He's going to walk a lot. Sure, that a really good hitter needs to walk a lot regardless, but
I agree.
he's also going to have a decent batting average for all the old heads out there, right? Carlos Santana is not your guy. He's
Your
not
guy.
gonna, not at all.
My guy.
Brandon Belt, not your guy, right? He's gonna bat
Yeah.
250, right? That's not productive. Um, Brandon Nimmo's gonna hit 275 to 290, right? 275, 285.
Very good. Very
That range,
good.
very good, right? It's enough to get those guys off your back. And he's gonna slug 460 to 500 plus, not necessarily 550 plus. He's not going to be in that record in that realm of Harper, right? He's not going to be in that realm of some of these other guys like even like Schwarber, right? Where it's like when Schwarber's on, he's going to absolutely crush. Not going to be in that range. But who would you rather have on your team? Right? Somebody like a Schwarber, somebody like a Castellanos, like we talked about, where it's like, they have those outsized aspects of their game that are really good, that I'm sure in some ways a lot of old heads like when it comes to the power and stuff. But overall, Nimmo's just going to give you everything you want, right? He's going to get
Exactly.
everything that you're looking for in a base play. In some ways, he reminds me of Marte, he's a better hitter.
Yeah. So I
Insane.
think something with Nimmo too that I want to throw out there is that he's not a WAR accumulator in the same way that like I don't want to say WAR accumulator because that sounds negative, but these are like think of Marcus Semien, right?
Yeah,
Where no one would say Marcus Semien's a top five player in baseball, although he usually ranked towards the top of the league in WAR very often. I think
right.
since 2018 or 19, like he's up there, like he's like in the top five, but it's because he
Right.
never misses the game. He plays good defense and
Exactly. Cumulative
he's above
stat.
average hitter. Yeah, right. So like he's one of those guys, but Nimmo's not. Like so Nimmo in 2018 had a 4.8 F-WAR season, had a 148 WRC plus. Crazy numbers, right?
Yeah.
But in 2019, 69 games. 2020's COVID, like he did play the whole year, but obviously not a lot of games. 2021, he played in 92 games and also was still able to post a 3.3 F-WAR, by the way. But those are 3 years he basically lost.
That's a
In a
great point.
way, 2022, 5.2 WAR, 2023, 4.3 with 130 plus WRC plus production. This is a this is a year in year out guy who's consistently not good, great. Like those are
Yeah.
objectively great numbers, right?
Seriously.
Like
Yeah. And yeah, he's gonna. To me, you know what he reminds me a lot of? He reminds me a lot of what people thought Michael Conforto could be back when he made
mm,
his debut. He had a very similar peripherals where it's like he's gonna go out there and bat, like I said, 280 plus, gonna have a 400 on base percentage. He's gonna slug some decent, throw some decent slugging as well. But what's funny is that Nimmo has ended up being that guy, and Conforto's kind of fallen off over the last couple of years. It's been really cool to see Brandon Nimmo actually like rebound from those levels of
yeah,
injuries, because he was kind of seen, he was consistent with his level of production, but not necessarily with his rate of production. So it's nice
yeah,
to see him over the last couple seasons get in over 150 games in back-to-back years, because before that he only had one season over 140 back in 2018.
yeah. But it's and I think that's why he stands out more to me. Like I said to the other guys, is he's not one of those guys who has a better WAR than people because he's on the field a lot. Like I said, he had almost 100 less games than Bryce Harper in that span and still had roughly the same WAR. Like that like he just produces.
And what's funny about it too is in some ways I think it's a little sneakier. Like when I'm looking through kind of his baseball reference page, he's not even like the greatest fielder. Like he's like kind of
Yeah, no,
about average. It's just
yeah, it's just like mid.
what it's like,
It's
and
it's
this is
offense.
this is what they mean about like the war merchant. For whatever reason, his
Yeah.
specific set of skills, his just good enough batting average, his slugging that's decent, and
Yes.
that outsized OBP all leads into a profile, because like his career home runs per 162 games is 19. Like not that
Yeah.
crazy, but like it all boils into this 130 OPS plus, 135, I think you said, WRC plus, which gives him a good WAR total. In some ways, it almost doesn't make sense. When I look at these numbers, they don't necessarily add up to what I picture as being this perennial like 4.5 WAR guy. But
He plays center.
The numbers, yeah, that's a great point too. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, he plays center. That's the thing. Like that's why like I think some people lose sight of that sometimes, especially with like shortstops, war totals, especially with a center fielder is harder position. You get a boost defensively. So Nimmo
Yeah,
being Nimmo being mid at center is more valuable than someone being good at first base.
right.
Or
That's Harper. That's that or Trout. That's long helped Trout in center field. He's never been like the most elite center fielder, but he's always
yeah.
been decent. And it's like you throw in what he's managed to do offensively with that defense, and I just think adds up to that war.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, hey, Brandon Nimmo, Mike Trout light. You heard it here first.
Stamping my approval on
Yes,
it. He's
Mike Trout
literally
light.
Mike Trout.
Dude, yeah. All right, dude. That's
Okay.
everybody, man. We broke them all down. Our underappreciated players, like we said, not underrated. These guys have gotten shine. Nimmo's gotten shine. I've heard about him in
Yeah,
baseball circles getting shine for this war, right? Belt,
of
same
course.
thing. A lot of people. Belt's actually been a semi-popular name over this offseason when it comes to people talking about underrated hitters from the 2023 season. But you know what? They're underappreciated. They don't get talked about enough. So we wanted to talk about them. Those are our three guys each that we laid out. And we hope you enjoyed.
Peace.